Howdy y'all, and welcome to Craters Gaming. Today we're going to be making a longhouse for our miniatures game. We're going to be using some smaller pieces that I have previously cut up. I will put the dimensions in the description. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get to it. Behold my stash of cut foam. Like I've stated earlier, I will have the dimensions of this project down in the description. So if you want to make it exactly the way that I did, that will be down below. Or you can just make it however you want, or whatever dimensions you want it to be. Here I'm just kind of sizing it up, making sure that I cut it to the right length that I want it to be, because I want that top beam to kind of hang over a little bit on the finished project. Just measuring out and sizing what I want the base to be, which is just some chipboard. It's also the same type of material that you find on the back of notebooks if you want to be super cheap and not have to spend a whole lot of money, which is the best. And a little safety reminder, make sure whenever you're cutting it, you cut away from yourself if you're not going to use scissors. Scissors would have probably been better, but nobody got hurt, so I'm good. Here I'm just going to measure out where I want the edges of my building to stop, because I do want a little bit of green turf on the sides. A little bead of hot glue will help me kind of set it up the way I want it to be. Now for the majority of this project, I will be using hot glue because I have zero patience. This is a low heat glue gun, which is less likely to melt my foam. If you use high heat glue gun, it will definitely melt it. It won't do very well, but this is low heat, so it does just fine. As safely as you can, put a little bead at the top. You don't have to use a whole lot to make this work. I love using the hot glue because then you don't have to wait for it or pin it in place. Just make sure to push it in on the edges and anywhere where you see a gap. That way you kind of close that in a little bit. But worst comes to worst, you can always cover it up with a little bit of turf and have a mossy roof, which I will have at the end of this. Only I know where the mistakes are. Well, I guess y'all too, because you can see the top view. And I roughly measured out the walls of my little house. It's not perfect, but then again, it doesn't have to be perfect. They weren't perfect whenever they built their houses way back when, and this is Fantasyland, so it doesn't have to be exact. And I'm just going to cut the tip off on this, that way it fits in with that beam sitting in there. I didn't account for that when I initially cut it for this. Now that I know it fits, I'm going to go ahead and pop it back out and go ahead and draw my wood grain and lines on where I want everything to go. With this being this type of house, it's a little easier because I don't have to do this all the way around, because the sides of this house is going to be shingles. I could have done it in thatched. I think the next one that I make is going to be a thatched roof, and I may or may not use some foxed fur for that, some of that fake fur, but we'll see. In this, I'm just roughly measuring out about 1 centimeter each, give or take. It doesn't really matter, but I do like a little bit of straight lines. Go ahead and draw the ends of your planks of wood, because they're not all going to be the same size, and we don't want it to be. It just looks better this way. I think I like these projects because they're very forgiving. If you mess up, you can always just cover it up with a little bit of turf and just call it moss. I am going to go ahead and go over this with a wire brush. That way it picks up even more details, and it really pops whenever you go to do the dry brush at the very end. Remember to enjoy yourself, and even if you make some mistakes, it's fine. Nobody's really going to notice that much. And if they do, then they can make their own stuff. Just remember to have fun and enjoy what you make. So I decided to go ahead and jump ahead a little bit. I am going to go ahead and glue a little door to the front because I like it kind of popping out a little bit. Now, if I could just chase my camera down where I can get it all in the same shot, I'll go ahead and frame in the door. Got some technical issues. I do apologize. Most of these, I'm just going to go ahead and glue down and cut it off whenever I'm done. Now, all the extra pieces I will use in a later project, so they will not be tossed. They will be used because we reuse everything that we can. We're also going to go in and put in a little bit of framework on the sides after we're done framing in the door. We're also going to put in a couple of strips on the door for the panels to hold the wood planks together there, using some of the scrap foam that we cut off earlier. And just making sure not to get too close, because even though this is a low heat gun, if you leave it on there too long, it will melt. And now the fun part, putting the front and the back on, and hopefully it doesn't fall through. Now we are going to use some more of those scrap pieces and to finish framing this in and hide any boo-boos that we may or may not have in our project. And oops, we dropped it. That's okay, because it's done with hot glue and it's not going anywhere. Now if I could just remember to keep it in frame, I'd be doing even better. Now for the back side, same as the first. We're just going to go ahead and push that in and try not to push it all the way in. Now you see where I had messed up at the top, that's about to get hidden whenever I finish framing this up. I think Bob Ross was the one that said that there are no mistakes, just happy accidents. Now it's on to roofing, the best part, because you're almost done with the building. I do already have these pre-cut. They're a little bit longer than the actual house itself, but if there's too much of a hangover, we're just going to cut that off at the very end, so it doesn't really matter. Now we're just going to go ahead and overlap it going up, and it will look pretty good when we're done. I am going to go ahead and fast forward to it being completely roofed, because this, like watching paint dry, it's no fun. But you get the gist. You just go up the side, just overlap it just slightly, going all the way up. And like I said earlier, if there's any overhang that you don't want to be there, just cut it off and have it nice and even. I'd say it looks pretty darn good. Next step I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of Elmer's glue that I mixed with some brown paint. I'm going to put a little bit of sand in there to kind of give it some texture before I spray paint it with the Army Painter Terrain Primer. It does not melt the foam like regular spray paint does. I really like this stuff. It's a little on the expensive side, but I think it's well worth the investment. And with the texture, we're not trying to be Picasso, we're just trying to get a little bit, which is great. And may or may not matter at the end, because I do end up putting some turf on it, so it doesn't really matter. Not too shabby if I don't say so myself. Here's that paint that I was talking about. It works pretty good. I like it. We're going to go ahead and take a break at this portion of the video to remind you that if you do like what we do here and you want to help support us, you can buy us a coffee. It definitely is appreciated, and you do get a shout out. Not seen here is the spray paint coat that I gave it. I didn't figure y'all want to watch that for the umpteenth millionth time, but we'll probably show that in a later video of some other projects, just not this one. We're going to go ahead and dry brush some chocolate bar brown color, and then go a little bit lighter with, we're probably going to do about 3 different shades of brown on this, just to give it some pop. I don't want it completely coated because I do kind of like that darker brown of the spray paint that we used earlier. Next is a territorial beige color. I didn't name this, it's just the name of the paint. But we're going to go ahead and dry brush this on as well. Remember, if you go a little too heavy, which I tend to do sometimes, you can cover it up. It's not the end of the world. And then if it really does bother you, you can just repaint it a darker color and just start all over again. It's going to be fine. Just take big deep breaths, trust the process, and it will work out fine. And not the fine that you're going to be in trouble, but the fine that it's okay. Just make sure to go all the way around this house on all the little details that you've made with the
wire brush or your ink pen to make little wood grains and stuff, but it looks pretty darn good. I like that. It looks good. I don't know how many times I'm going to say it looks good, because it does.
For the final application of our dry brush project, we're using Classic Ceramic by Apple Barrel. Only the finest paints in this household. Just joking. Whatever's closest to hand and whatever's the cheapest is what we're going to be using. You don't have to go broke to have a good time. And if you do go a little too heavy-handed, don't worry too much. Just remember, because this is acrylic paints, it does dry a little bit darker than when you first apply it. And when you're done and it is still too bright, you can give it a little wash and it will dull it down even more and bring out more details. Didn't do any of that with this project because I really like how it turned out. I am using a little bit of Timeless Gray, another Apple Barrel product, to kind of help me with the hinges a little bit. So whenever I go in and do my silver, it really gives it pop and I don't have to put too many coats on. For that, I will be using Army Painter Deadly Iron because it's the best silver I got. Also going to paint a little door handle. I didn't feel like gluing a bead on this time, so I just put a little line on there. So kind of get the gist of it. I'm going to use some more of our glue mix, but this time we're going to put on some turf. And it's some of that mixture that we've used before in previous videos by Woodland Scenics. I want to have this have a bit of a mossy look because it's going to be in an abandoned meadow. Might be a Twisted Little Three Little Bears story. I haven't decided yet because we are working with fish people and fish monsters and lizard folk. It may be three little lizard folks. Mix up the story just a little bit. It's homebrew. I do what I want. This application, you can add as little or as much moss as you want. And now you can use actual moss if you prefer. I kind of like the turf because it's not as thick. And I don't have to worry about knocking it off or having to use hot glue. So this dries pretty quick and it's done in a flash and it looks great. And here's the finished product. I am very happy with how it turned out. I did add a few small rocks and stones to the front to give it more of that authentic look, but I'm really stoked on how it looks. Well, there you have it. Super easy. It's fairly quick if you already have the pieces pre-cut like I did. I did spend the previous day, maybe about an hour or two, cutting pieces. It wasn't just for this project, but for future projects as well, because if you're already going to have the hot wire out, you might as well go ahead and get your use out of it. That way I don't have to keep bringing it up and down because I have it on the top shelf and it's a little hard to get to. But if you liked the video, please hit the like, subscribe, share the video. It helps out a whole lot, and I hope to see y'all again next Friday. Bye.